Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We're going to try to answer some questions that were left over from a sermon series, You Ask, We Answer, when we had a discussion about being single and being celibate at the same time. So here's a few questions that came in that we just didn't have a chance to answer live. First question, guys. Is it okay to date online?
Sure. Yes. However, how one connects with people in a digital world, maybe I don't think there's anything inherently sinful about it, but maybe.
Yeah, I think the difference, the wisdom here is if you're wanting to date to try to find sexual partners, then no, don't date online and don't date at all, because that's not why you should be dating. If you're using dating as an opportunity to meet people, to search for the person that you're going to marry, I don't know why online dating wouldn't be at least an option, because it's just another way to meet people. Mm-hmm. There's not really qualitatively any difference between going to a grocery store and dating online. It's just putting information out there and trying to find someone. So
now, I will say, with certain online dating and dating apps, there is almost an assumption that everybody on there is searching for sexual partners and casual sex. If you are a follower of Christ, you need to make very clear that's not what you're there for. Steer away from the apps that are directly targeting that audience.
Yeah, thank you for making that distinction. I think I would add this as a parent. If you are a young woman, if you're a woman in general, be careful that you know you're safe the first time you meet somebody. So when you're dating online, by all means, try to see, is this the mate that God wants you to spend the rest of your life with? But at some point, you're going to have to go from dating online to meeting in person. And that's where a lot of women have been taken advantage of. And we would ask you just to be very, very smart about that. In fact, bring somebody with you. Bring a dude with you that you can trust to make sure that some guy doesn't do something to you that's going to take your purity away from you. So just be wise. Next question. How do you set physical boundaries in a dating relationship? And this is a great question. Can I ask you guys to answer two questions here? How do you set physical boundaries is probably the second question. The first question is, where are the physical boundaries? Let's answer that one. That didn't get asked, but let's answer that one first and then answer the how question second.
Where you put those boundaries directly relate to what best protects and keeps secure your personal holiness and your relationship with Jesus. And that is of utmost importance, your personal holiness. And so as you start to ask yourself, what boundaries am I establishing in a relationship? What do I need to most protect in this walk with Christ that brings God the most glory, brings Jesus the most glory, and that is of highest priority. And if a person that I'm interested in dating doesn't respect where I have these boundaries as it relates to my walk with Jesus, then that person's not worthy of me dating in that moment. So I think first you got to look at, all right, what am I most trying to protect when it comes to my walk with Jesus? Would be where I start. And then you start to ask yourself, okay, then what are those boundaries now?
I think Paul gives us a little insight into this in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 2. Paul is encouraging Timothy as he leads this church at Ephesus. He says, tell them to treat the older woman as you would your mother, and treat the younger woman with all purity as you would your sister. Mm-hmm. I think you can, an inference that you can draw from that in terms of application, in terms of boundaries, is in a dating relationship, pre-marriage, if you wouldn't do it with your sister, you probably shouldn't do it with her. That might be a good way to kind of understand those boundaries, because ultimately it's about maintaining a purity in your life and purity in their life as it pertains to the holiness of God lived out in our lives. I think Paul gives a little a parameter for us to kind of operate under in that way.
So the second question, the real question that was asked is, how do you set those boundaries? And I think this is a how-to, or we're in a relationship, we are both physically attracted to each other. How do I set this boundary?
communication is important. You have to actually talk about what those boundaries are with each other, and you have to decide in a moment that isn't in the middle of an opportunity to
Right.
be in that situation. Beforehand, you have to have that conversation with those people, and then have people that will hold you accountable.
I was going to say, Michael, you got to give permission to both people. Have to give permission to someone else to ask tough questions and to keep you accountable to where those boundaries are. And you owe it to yourself. You owe it to that person you're dating to make sure you have other people involved in helping you kind of keep to where these boundaries are. Make them realistic. Make them well known, and then keep to them is really the big thing there. Actually do what you said. All right, these are the things that we're establishing as our priority here in this relationship.
I also think it's important that in this process of communication, setting boundaries, that each person kind of is aware of where their areas of sin may be, especially if it comes to sexual sin. I remember a great series that Andy Stanley did one time on guardrails, and it was one of these that just sort of resonated with me as this wonderful mental image. If you set a guardrail to keep you from running into the ditch, right? It's actually in a place where you could drive your car where the guardrail is actually at, but you place these guardrails there to keep you off of these danger zones. So I think knowing where your danger zones are, and then having conversations with people to set guardrails, set boundaries, personal standards of living that say, I'm not going to go here, not because I think that's a sin, but because I know this is a sin. And so for me and for our relationship, we're going to stay and operate over here. And I think having those conversations, understanding, being aware of where the boundary lines are for you in your relationship with your own sexual sins, and being willing to set standards of conviction for yourself that say, this is where I need to stay so that I maintain purity and holiness.
I would like to add, and I'm fairly dogmatic about this, if you're a single guy listening to this, you set the boundaries.
Absolutely.
She doesn't.
Yeah.
In our society, unfortunately, it's mostly the women who say, yeah, I don't want to cross this line. And so if you're a single lady, try to find a man who's willing to set that line for you, because by him setting the line, he's showing you, I'm willing to be the spiritual leader, I'm willing to discipline myself, and I'm willing to protect your purity.
Yes.
So if you're a young guy who's single, you set the physical boundaries in the relationship, and you tell her, I'm not willing to cross this line. And if you're a young single lady, look for the kind of man that will set the boundaries for you instead of you setting the boundaries for him. Hey guys, you've helped answer some great questions. There's still more that needs to be answered, so check out this next video.